Tucson, Arizona. Night of December 9. Sunrise, 7:13 a.m. You pick Elena up at Covenant Pawn Shop, then drive to the Viper. You tune the Audi's radio to hear the news. This is Mel Pomini Chen, and you're listening to Mel at Midnight. The sudden death by suicide of conservative Professor Greg Halden has shocked the University of Arizona. Halden emerged into the national spotlight in 2017 after the publication of his book, Naming the Tiger, a work of neo-reactionary philosophy. After being suspended by the University of Arizona for allegedly anti-Semitic remarks and claims that the Catholic Church was being infiltrated by what he called spiritual parasites, he was suddenly reinstated just 2 weeks ago. Several members of the traditional Catholic and neo-reactionary movements have claimed that Halden's death should be investigated as a murder. You roll past that conquistador statue in the middle of Tucson to get around a traffic jam, idly thinking about the offers you've heard and deals you've made over the last few weeks, since your CRX broke down. Then the moon passes behind a building, and in that moment you have a sense of powers moving in the darkness, vast luminous shapes you rarely see and could not recognize. In that instant, Discipline is not some aesthete with a nightclub, but the entire Camarilla the alliance made in desperation that grew into a conspiracy that reshaped Europe and the world. Dispin, Leto, Dove. Fragments of a greater whole. And what does that make Julian Sim? The moon reappears, and you realize that you don't have to decide now. But soon. You'll have to decide soon. Prince Leto is right about the need to enforce the Masquerade. Kindred need to survive, and it's our only protection. I think I'm for Prince Leto and the Camarilla. The traditions, including the Masquerade, can be harsh, but they're necessary. Julian can build a new world, or at least take a new step toward one. I'm with him. For as long as I think I can trust him. The Camarilla is grumbling, and the traditions exist to serve the elders. If Julian can do something new and better, I'm in for now. The kindred horrify me. What we do is monstrous. If I could shed ties to both Leto and Julian, I would. I'm just here to make money and live well. And if an opportunity shows up in the next few weeks to live really well, I'll take it. I honestly do not know. A few weeks ago you were eking out a living in a busted CRX with a broken phone and a glove compartment lined with tinfoil. Now you're Leto's most trusted courier out of desperation, true, but that doesn't change your newfound stature. Next week you might be driving up to Canada, or buried in your haven as the Second Inquisition sweeps through Tucson with fire and drones, or the target of a blood hunt for some real or imagined violation of the Masquerade. This situation will change. It will end. But things always change. They always end. You just need to be ready. You arrive a little later than last time, but the nightclub still isn't open. A Tucson police cruiser is in the deserted parking lot, and Department of Health stickers covered the doors. Shut down for health code violations, Elena says. It was probably the mozzarella sticks. You can only get inside by hiding from the cop car and climbing the fire escape up to the mostly empty Elysium. Alexander and Carlos are up there, passing a joint back and forth. Do you see this, Celeste? Carlos says. Ow, show them how you hold a roach. Like a degenerate Frenchman. Look at that. Disgusting. Carlos takes the joint back. As you can see, Alexander tells you, we have suffered a momentary setback. But you still have work. Continue to remain off the highways. And remember not to use phones. Do you have anything for me? You ask. This time you are picking up, not dropping off, the retainer says. His breath is particularly rank this evening. He hands you the address of the Cinderblock, Dispin's Jazz Club in Dallas, and the key to a one-bedroom apartment a block away from the club. Dispin is awaiting a courier. Tell her Leto sent you, and to give you the information he needs. That easy? You say. I doubt it. Alexander says. He smiles, showing his little grey teeth. You need to keep away from El Paso, so your best bet is to head north out of Tucson, then risk us 60 past Lubbock and Abilene. After that, it gets easier. Texas is a spiderweb of minor roads, so you can remain flexible if you need to improvise. You don't want to approach Dallas from Fort Worth, too much police coverage, but that still leaves you with a lot of options. You ask yourself the same question as last time, where can you find shelter during the day? You did fine last time, but who knows what awaits you on the road east. I send Elena in her Datsun to secure a place. I'll have to look like a calm and composed leader to get her to go into danger first. Com plus leadership, it's better to avoid settlements and the endless police patrols. I'll use my survival skills and patience to find a cave or some other shelter outside of town. Commerce plus survival, I'll head into the wilds outside of town and sink into the earth to avoid discovery. Protean, I head for the largest town and stick to the hardest streets I can find, sleeping in sewers or underpasses to stay out of trouble. Wit plus streetwise, I use one of my many falsets and bluff my way through check-in at a mid-range motel. A few easy lies will keep the Inquisition off my trail. Man plus subterfuge, it should be easy to throw some money around and stay someplace nice. I'll have to rely on charm and persuade people not to pay much attention to me. Char plus persuasion, I stick with the rundown parts of town. I look for another cheap flophouse or bottom-of-the-line motel that won't rob me. Wit plus awareness, working quickly so I'm not spotted, I break into an abandoned building and stay there. Dex plus clandestine, I investigate local newspapers and websites to find empty but unsecured buildings where I can stay. And plus academics slash investigation. I use my tech skills to rig up a portable shelter inside my car. And plus technology, do I know any blood sorcery that will keep me safe? What about Julian? Can he help me? Julian. After giving Elena the address for the Cinderblock and watching her Datsun's taillights disappear down the street, you think about the best place to stop for the day. You suspect your best bet is some place called Roswell in New Mexico. Sounds dull, but they have plenty of motels. The drive east is boring, full of winding country roads and Texas roadside kitsch. There isn't a lot of town here in Roswell, but there's still a bad part of town. You drive slowly down a seedy, badly lit stretch of road, past a shuttered nail salon, a burned-out gas station, and a chain pizza restaurant you remember from your childhood and haven't thought about since. The motels here are dingy and unpleasant, surviving on misappropriated government funds for halfway houses and addict shelters. But they'll take your business, they accept cash, and as long as you can fill out the right sort of place they won't look your way twice. You check out a few likely spots, but they just seem a little off. You can't figure out why, though, which is worrying. Maybe you're getting paranoid? Or maybe a black Buick SUV with government plates is following you. You pull a hard U-turn and then turn into an alley, and the SUV can't keep up. Lights off, You wait 5 minutes until a police cruiser screams past with its lights flashing, then roll back out onto the street. It seems like the sea knows the sort of place you like to stay, and they're staking them out. You'll need to find someplace else. They can't blanket the entire town, maybe something more upscale will be safe. It's better to avoid settlements and the endless police patrols. I'll use my survival skills and patience to find a cave or some other shelter outside of town. Commerce plus survival. I'll head into the wilds outside of town and sink into the earth to avoid discovery. Protean. I stick to the hardest streets I can find, sleeping in sewers or underpasses to stay out of trouble. Wit plus streetwise. I use one of my many falsets and bluff my way through check-in at a mid-range motel. A few easy lies will keep the Inquisition off my trail. Man plus subterfuge. It should be easy to throw some money around and stay someplace nice. I'll have to rely on charm and persuade people not to pay much attention to me. Char plus persuasion. Working quickly so I'm not spotted. I break into an abandoned building and stay there. Dex plus clandestine. I find some Wi-Fi and investigate local newspapers and websites to find empty but unsecured buildings where I can stay. And plus academics slash investigation. I don't. After giving Elena the address for the cinder block and watching her Datsun's taillights disappear down the street, you think about the best place to stop for the day. You suspect your best bet is someplace called Roswell in New Mexico. Sounds dull, but they have plenty of motels. Your research turns up all sorts of irrelevant details, but checking local news sites yields information you can use: bankruptcies and evictions, estate sales and event cancellations. The drive east is boring, full of winding country roads and Texas roadside gitch. When you roll into town, you check out a few places you read about. Most are not locked tight, one has been reoccupied already. But then you find the old tourist visitor center. The decaying building looks just like the picture you saw on that news website. It's not far from the gleaming new visitor center, and indeed, one wall is wide open, making it easy to slip inside. You climb over broken bottles, try not to think about the stained mattress, and find some lockers that can accommodate a sleepy vampire. Inoya takes up a guard position near the open entrance. As you get back on the road heading east, you once again scan your rearview mirrors for signs of pursuit. But it looks like you're clear. You head for Dallas. Some part of you was expecting a sci-fi apocalypse when you hit Dallas: roadblocks, burned-out cars, black and empty skyscrapers. But everything you see is eerily normal. The wide-open highways full of white trucks, tree-lined upscale avenues, and trash-strewn industrial boulevards look unchanged since your last visit. You approach from the north, crossing under the President George Bush Turnpike and then scanning for a tail. Nothing. You only know Despin by reputation as a socialite and ghoul shaper, but you doubt the aesthete will hand over her information for free. And it's not like Leto sent you with a suitcase full of cash. That would be too much of a risk with the Camarilla as vulnerable as it is right now. You might be here for a few nights, just wheeling and dealing. Once you're sure you're not being followed, you and Inoya head to your one-bedroom apartment. It's grubby and run down but secure, with reinforced curtains and deadbolts on the doors. Elena's Datsun is parked outside, and she's already gone food shopping and set up portable cameras aimed at the door and window. You're just getting ready to scope out the cinder block when you hear movement outside. Celeste, it's me. Julian. You wonder how much the Camarilla knows about your dealings with Julian. Nonetheless, you check that the chain lock is secure, then crack the door. Cool town, huh? The Banu Hakim says, slipping inside with a friendly smile. You're not sure how he did that. His black and white berserk hoodie is covered in red stains. What happened to you? I retrieved my pistol from its holster, hung on the chair, in case I need to kill someone. I hope no one followed you. I can't have the sea finding out where I'm staying. Did you already piss off Dispin? Because I need her to like me. I just let him talk. Julian probably has something interesting for me. I pull him inside. Julian, I realize, means a lot to me. Now might be a good time to tell him. Hunters all over this town, Julian says. 2 of them followed me. They thought I was a thin blood or something. Hey, can I wash my hands? He hold them up. They're both covered in blood up to the elbow. While cleaning up in your bathroom, the Banu Hakim says, how are you planning on getting the info from Dispin? I'll just tell her I'm working for Leto. The Camarilla only functions if the kindred in it can swap favors. I was going to start by being polite and then threatening to kick the shit out of her if she made a fuss. She'll probably want some kind of favor. I'll see what sort of agreement we can reach, as long as it doesn't cost me too much. I'll reason with her. We're all in this together now, with the sea everywhere. She's going to try to screw you, you know, Julian says from the bathroom. But you have the right attitude. Never forget that most established Camarilla would rather die than deal fairly. Dispin is going to start making demands the moment you show up. And that assumes you can even get in. It's not that exclusive, you say. You check your leather jacket, then put your dress on. The head bouncer is undercover FBI, Julian says. Part of their Special Affairs Division, which deals with canine activity. Dispin doesn't know. Whatever you do, don't just walk in. Once you're in, don't trust Dispin. And once you have her information, obviously I'm going to want a copy. And I'm going to want to get paid. What information am I picking up? I need to understand the bigger picture. If it fucks with the Camarilla, I'm in. Just don't let it get traced back to me. As long as Leto doesn't figure out what I'm doing, I'm not getting staked for you, Julian. Obviously. Get me that information, I'll make a copy, and then you can hand it over to Leto. Easy. He peels off his bloody hoodie, drops it in your sink, and scratches your Lobo's ears. And watch yourself, Celeste. Hunters are everywhere, and they don't all die as easy as the kids I just left in a dumpster. Dallas isn't a walking city, but sidewalks lead all the way from your apartment to the jazz club. You check out the crowd. The line isn't long, but the people outside look sharp. The bouncer Julian warned you about is outside talking on his phone. You recognize him from Campsville. You cross the street before he notices you, and consider what to do. You need to know who at the cinder block is compromised and in what ways, before you can even think about approaching Dispin. A cursory investigation of the jazz club's exterior turns up a few avenues of investigation you might pursue. If you're in the mood for some old-fashioned sleuthing, the club doesn't guard its trash very well with enough patience. You could dig through that. You could also try talking to people. Petty criminals hang around the cinder block just like at the Viper, and if you don't act the fool, you can learn things for a modest fee. Or you could just drift as close as you can to the line outside and listen, though you'd have to play it cool to not draw attention. And if you want to get dangerous, you could try testing the cinder block's security system not to get in, just to see how they react. You'd have to be clever, though, to avoid getting caught. Or you could stay away from the club entirely. If that bouncer used to work for the feds, you might be able to hack into some badly secured government websites to learn more about him. Or you could focus on the club itself, not the bouncer. What sort of records might you turn up about its finances and its dealings? Elena and I talk to the local criminals outside the cinder block. As long as I don't act stupid, some bribes should tell us what we need to know. Which plus streetwise, that bouncer was a government agent. I'm smart enough to hack into some federal databases and learn more about him. And plus technology, most feds are educated these days and connected. I conduct research at local libraries and universities to see if I can make connections between the bouncer and anyone else. And plus academics, it shouldn't be hard to steal some of the cinder block's trash and then analyze it, deciphering it for clues. And plus investigation, enhancing my senses will make it easier to spot. It's a joke among your clan that the only reason you're in the Camarilla is because the princes can keep libraries open all night. Unfortunately, you're not even sure who the Prince of Dallas is now, or if there is one. It's been a rough few years for everyone. You call ahead to a few libraries and public records offices, without success, until you learn that the University of Texas at Dallas has a library open to researchers. You take Elena's Datsun. It's a half-hour drive north. No one stops you as you walk in. The first thing you need is a name. To get that, you search federal records until you find a mention of Camps Fuller, then follow the trail back to an obscure academic article on violence in Texas that mentions Millicent True. It's hard to forget Millicent's at Camps Fuller. You follow that byline to further articles criticizing internment, until you spot a face you recognize. That's him, that's the bouncer. And then you read the names, from left to right. He's Louis Belleffen. From there, you're able to pull up hard copies of local news stories that tell you all sorts of useful information. There's not much here about Louis, but you follow police reports about the cinder block to the names and identities of the rest of the jazz club's security personnel. This gives you information not just on his security team, but the people and companies responsible for the jazz club's security protocols. You copy as much information as you can. The next night, Elena and I talk to the local criminals outside the cinder block. As long as I don't act stupid, some bribes should tell us what we need to know. Which plus streetwise, Louis Belleffen was a government agent. I'm smart enough to hack into some federal databases and learn more about him. And plus technology, it shouldn't be hard to steal some of the cinder block's trash and then analyze it, deciphering it for clues. And plus investigation, enhancing my senses will make it easier to spot clues in the trash, though no more enjoyable. Or specs, I just play it cool and wander around outside the cinder block, listening for anything useful. Plus awareness, my heightened senses will let me listen in. Or well-dressed people standing in a line outside a club are mostly idiots, but there's a chance someone might say something useful. You and Elena circulate through the crowds. It's a long and boring night spent trying to avoid drawing the attention of security, and there's no one eureka moment. But you slowly gather information. People don't know about the Inquisition, but they know that the jazz club's shadowy owner is in trouble. And then you start to hear names: Victor Koval, Edward Chambet, Aliette Blythe Sanderson. You know Victor because of Elena, but the other two names are only a little familiar. You retreat to your apartment to look up Aliette, an influential society maven, and Edouard, a mystery figure, some kind of smuggler, you think. You spend the rest of the night seeing how the four of them, Despin, Victor, Edouard, Aliet, work together to control legitimate, grey market, and outright criminal trade in Arizona and Texas. All of this information should prove useful when you enter the cinder block and speak to Despin. The next night, Elena and I talk to the local criminals outside the cinder block. As long as I don't act stupid, some bribes should tell us what we need to know. Which plus streetwise, Louis Belleven was a government agent. I'm smart enough to hack into some federal data. Elena gets back from a local barbecue place with a dripping wet bag of ribs just in time to help you set up. With your laptop, your phone, and the scanning equipment that's part of your hand-assembled intrusion kit, you get to work. Knowing Louis Belleven's name makes the initial research easy, since he still has connections at Penn State, where he went to college. The harder part is uncovering anything about his background. Finally, you discover that Louis Belleven, born Louis Africa in Philadelphia in 1978, lost his family during the 1985 move bombings. From there he was moved into foster care. But then it gets interesting. Louis Belleven's face keeps showing up in all sorts of left-wing groups, mostly Black Liberation, but also several radical environmentalist movements just before they collapse or their members are all arrested. Louis has spent years infiltrating these groups, and it doesn't look like anyone has identified him. That's interesting. But how does it help you? Here you go, contacts. Dozens of contacts, across dozens of identities, scattered all over the internet as these groups imploded. You spend the rest of the night collecting names and data. You still don't know how he ended up with the Special Affairs Division of the FBI and working for the Second Inquisition, but you understand who he is, how he operates, and what he knows how to do. This is invaluable. The next night, Elena and I talk to the local criminals outside the cinder block. As long as I don't act stupid, some bribes should tell us what we need to know. Which plus streetwise, it shouldn't be hard to steal some of the cinder block's trash and then analyze it, deciphering it for clues. And plus investigation, enhancing my senses will make it easier to spot clues in the trash, though no more enjoyable. Or specs. I work. You don't want to hunt anywhere near the cinder block, since that might draw attention, but that still leaves the entire Dallas/Fort Worth metropolitan area. Nonetheless, this won't be easy. The Second Inquisition just finished their rampage, and even though the city looks normal, there's an edge to it, like it might explode again at the slightest provocation. So you better not provoke anyone. The higher-end clubs have a bad energy, like they're being watched, so if you want to hit the scene, you're going to end up somewhere dangerous, somewhere street smarts and staying cool are going to be more important than charm or dance moves. Bars and cafes seem relatively safe, if you're looking to fuck your dinner. There are lots of pretty young things out tonight, totally unaware that a major battle just tore through their city. A bit of charm, a bit of deception, and you should be able to get what you want. Just kicking someone's ass and taking their blood is possible everywhere you go, but you really don't want to make noise. There are still plainclothes C-affiliated FBI agents, and probably worse, patrolling the city. You'd have to be clever to spot a vulnerable target and manage a silent, stealthy takedown. There isn't a lot of large animal prey around Dallas, but the bad parts of town have plenty of rats. It's an unglamorous way to spend the night, but quick hands would let you drink your fill of the vermin before dawn. Finally, with Dallas in chaos and the prince destroyed or missing, you're not even sure where you'd begin looking for blood. You don't want to risk a break-in with the sea everywhere, but you might be able to investigate who still has connections and gain access that way. I use my technical education to investigate the local blood banks, trying to find a contact among the kindred. And plus investigation/technology, I head to the worst parts of town and start grabbing rats until I'm full. Not pleasant, but not hard either. Dex plus survival, enhancing my senses will help me grab rats. Auspex, Inoya and I will coordinate to catch rats. Animalism, I hate. Every year this sort of feeding gets harder, but you're determined to make this work. You start with some basic online research. Once you have a list of blood banks and a few suspicious police reports, you drive around Dallas to check out a few places and make some casual inquiries. You catch the interest of one receptionist at a Glencoe plasma center, but she creeps you out, so you cross town. The next one you speak to, near the airport, seems to catch what you're hinting at, and you let him hand you an address to an abandoned hair salon in a nearby strip mall. "Don't move," a voice says. You don't. An old woman with glasses steps out of the shadows with a snub-nosed revolver. She blinks a few times, then lowers the weapon. "You're that courier," she says. "You're Millicent," you say. You remember her bar at Campsville. It looks like she's still in the blood business. "Were you followed?" Millicent asks. "Did you talk to anyone in Glencoe?" "I walked away," you say. She relaxes. "You're working, aren't you?" she says. "Okay, I'll get you what you need. But only once." The sea is all over our supply lines. A half hour later, you're sitting in a refrigerated beer truck drinking barely palatable bagged blood. Millicent makes sure you're topped off before sending you on your way. Elena and I talk to the local criminals outside the cinder block. As long as I don't act stupid, some bribes should tell us what we need to know. Which plus streetwise, it shouldn't be hard to steal some of the cinder blocks. Step 1 is getting the trash. Though it's not exactly guarded, people are always moving around in the streets and parking lots near the cinder block. You bide your time, then send Elena ahead with Inoya on a leash. She pretends to have trouble controlling the big dog, which gets everyone looking at them. With people distracted, you back up your Audi and throw the cinder blocks trash in the back. You and Elena throw a tarp down in the apartment's kitchen and start sorting. The first thing you find is a flip phone. There's nothing on it, so you destroy the SIM card so you can't be tracked and toss it. The rest of the work takes all night, but as dawn approaches, you have financial records, work schedules, inter-office memos, and someone should get fired for this, if not exsanguinated detailed information on the CCTV systems, including where to access them. You can basically walk through the cinder block like a ghost with the information you have here. The next night, Elena and I talk to the local criminals outside the cinder block. As long as I don't act stupid, some bribes should tell us what we need to know. Which plus streetwise. I work fast and test the cinder blocks. The dirt bags and creeps outside the cinder block are a little better dressed than the ones outside the Viper, but just as conniving and dangerous. But Elena is even more dangerous. She serves as the silent threat while you act friendly and a little naive, like an out-of-towner trying to find out who's holding. You spread some cash around and ask questions about security at the club. You make it clear you're not looking to rob it or start selling. Once your new friends believe you're here to settle a personal matter, they relax. And they're eager to talk, because they hate Louis, and don't much like the other people working there either. For a handful of 20s, you get names and descriptions of the 5 people working security at the cinder block. You already know a few names and histories from your research at the university library. But this is even more useful: personal details, facts and traits that don't get recorded in any official ledger. You're able to use that information to run a few internet searches. Those searches tell you about their military service, criminal history, anything you might need to know if you end up tangling with them. You've spent enough time investigating the cinder block, and you've accumulated some useful information. You spend the rest of the night with Elena reviewing what you know, then rest at the apartment for one final day. You arrive early the next evening and park your Audi across the street. You can't show up with a huge wolf no matter how well dressed you are, so you leave in order to lurk in a nearby alley behind a Korean restaurant and watch the car. Security is minimal around the door right now. It's time to go in. You bide your time until Louis goes inside and the new guy at the door is someone who's never looked your way before. You're able to slip inside without a problem. Elena follows a few minutes later so it doesn't look like you know each other. The Cinderblock is a jazz club, and from the posters outside, most nights that means hip-hop or Afro-Caribbean dance music, but tonight it's real 20th century jazz. A quartet is jamming on the stage while their singer, resplendent in her red sequined dress, drinks and flirts with a few old and important-looking men. You spot Victor, the Ukrainian, at a midnight blue table, negotiating with a young black man with a silver-tipped cane. You get just close enough to overhear a few words without them noticing you. More than my people can use now, the black man says in a pronounced French Haitian accent. Girls? Victor asks, his expression skeptical. Girls, boys, new kinds of beautiful creatures we did not have when we were young. All very fine, though. Only the best for you, Victor. The best of what you don't want, you mean? Victor says. They all laugh. You keep moving. As the music switches from low-key jazz to swing and the crowd floods the dance floor, you spot Despin. She's looking right at you. You know the aesthete only by reputation and description. She barely survived the fall of Toussaint's last prince, and fled here to rebuild. Most kindred grow thinner and become more still and coarse-like as they age, but Despin is big and energetic, with a huge red smile and hypnotic eyes. Curls of black hair cascade down her broad back, swirling as she tilts her head to study you. She's always in motion, like a fledgling, her dark face artfully touched with cosmetics. She looks away and whispers to a slim and beautiful man seated beside her. He stands up, moving with impossible elegance. You've heard that the aesthete conducts surgery on her ghouls to improve them. The ghoul moves so you, Despin, and he form an equilateral triangle. You look for Louis and don't see him. It's time to approach Despin. But how? Time to show this degenerate that I'm not some flunky. I sit in front of her and dare her to challenge me. Aggression might be dangerous. Or it might be rewarded. Let's find out. Char/rees plus intimidation. I just act charming and friendly while I approach Despin and start persuading her to help. I'm not looking to piss anyone off here. Char plus persuasion. I need an introduction from one of her people. I hit the bar, take my time, and listen to the crowd to figure out who can help me. Rees/wit plus awareness/investigation. Can I use my enhanced senses here? Using my gifts is forbidden at the rooftop Elysium at the Viper. I let Despin know I have information she wants. It might draw the C's attention, but I clear out her hangers-on and tell her who Louis works for. I send Elena in to smooth my approach. If Despin sees I command my own ghoul, she won't treat me like a flunky. Char plus leadership. The bar is hopping as the crowd orders complicated old-timey cocktails and preens for each other. You're just getting worried about making no headway when you spot a familiar face. Millicent, who set you up with some blood the other night, is seated at the edge of the bar with a tally counter clicker and a notebook. She's still dressed like a librarian. You don't approach Millicent right away. Instead you listen as she talks to an underling. We can't do anything for the blue blood while he's on the dance floor, she whispers. But make sure he has the sort of girls he likes in the old piano room. Yuri won't be a problem, but I don't like that degenerate from Tucson. She's waiting for someone, and it's making her nervous. You look around and spot the toreador from Prince Leto's court that Millicent is talking about. You've spoken with her a few times before. Inspired by this information, you walk halfway to Dispin and catch the younger degenerate's eye. Possibly mistaking you for her messenger, she heads your way. You lose her in the crowd and take her place between Dispin and a Russian you remember from Campsvilla. Dispin glances at you again but pays you no mind. You remain where you are, and once she has finished disputing with a lick you remember from Campsvilla, she smiles and says, "Please allow me to introduce Celeste, Prince Leto's courier from Tucson." "Do you have something for me, young woman?" "Prince Leto needs information," you say. "Why doesn't everyone hit the dance floor for a few minutes?" Dispin says. Her elegant followers leave in a casual way that still makes it clear that they obey her and only her. "I hear Tucson is a mess," Dispin says. The aesthete studies the crowd as the jazz music picks up, then says, "We're all in trouble nowadays, Celeste. So tell me, what can you offer Dispin in exchange for the information Leto wants?" An opening gambit, to let Dispin feel out your loyalties. You consider what to say. "One of your retainers works for the sea. Give me what I need, and I'll tell you who." "I'm curious, actually, what is the information I'm supposed to be picking up?" "In general. We're all in this together, Dispin. If you don't help Leto, and Tucson falls, that makes you weaker, not stronger. You're a businesswoman, Dispin. So am I. Let's find a deal that benefits both of us. What do you need?" "Every vampire is a grasping thief, it seems. But I can work with that. I have many skills. The question is what you need done." "I don't make promises that easily, Celeste," Dispin says. Nonetheless, you sense that giving up Louis would go a long way toward getting you what you want. "It's not like I want an sea agent here, it's safer to get rid of him. It's your head bouncer, Louis. I can't 100% trust Dispin, but I think I can trust the Camarilla to trade favors for favors. It's your head bouncer, Louis. And I don't share without a guarantee." "You're sure?" Dispin says. "I recognize him from the attack on Campsvilla," you say. You share with Dispin most of the other information you've learned about him. The aesthete considers this information for a moment, then gestures toward the bar. Millicent approaches. The two women conduct a brief conversation. "She's right," Millicent says. "I'm sorry, I should have checked." "Don't apologize. What do you want me to do about it?" Millicent asks. "I'll handle it," Dispin says, dismissing the bartender. Dispin's gaze is icy as Millicent returns to the bar, but then she smiles graciously and folds her gloved hands on her lap. "This place is riddled with spies," Dispin says, watching the head bouncer from beneath heavy-lidded eyes. "And not just Louis there. I don't even know if the Prince of Dallas is dust or not, but her agents are still here. Which brings me to what I want from you." Her smile is friendly ... or at least it looks friendly. "But though you've earned the respect of the local Camarilla, you know how dangerous they can be when they're cornered. You sit back and wait." Dispin takes her time. Toreador are lovers of beauty, and to be fair to Dispin, the jazz band is excellent. But finally she says, "I'm going to need to deal with a lot of problems at the same time. Let's talk about which ones concern you. First, That little Malay girl who's been watching me. Dispin's eyes lead you to a young woman in a long black coat, blended in with the crowd until now. You recognize Julian's assistant, Nadia. I want her gone. Julian wouldn't forgive you for that, even if gone doesn't mean dead in a ditch. But Prince Leto won't forgive failure here either. I also need to deal with Louis, of course. But I can't just get rid of him. I need someone to feed him false information. And of course, Dispin says, the sea hasn't just dragged kindred out of their havens and burned them. They've attacked us financially. They've frozen your bank accounts. You ask. Not exactly, Dispin says. But we're being monitored. Our cash can't move freely. And if I use my powers, it's likely someone in the sea will notice that a bank just did me a favor for no reason. How much money do you need? You ask. Another 5 grand will mean I'm clear to operate again without the Second Inquisition's financial team sniffing around. You're hitting me up for money? You say. You could pay that, but that's what Leto owes you for this job. It's a cash flow problem, Dispin says. You'll help it flow again. Isn't that good for everyone? What do you want me to do about Nadia? I'll deal with Nadia. That'll make Julian furious, but so be it. Really? $5,000? What sort of hustle do you want me to run on your head, bouncer? I'm also interested in improving my supernatural powers. Well, who am I say no to a neonate looking to better herself through education and hard work? Dispin says, flashing a big red-lipped smile. As you know, the kindred of Clan Toreador are seers of some accomplishment, and our powers of war are unparalleled whatever those blue bloods claim. And though we do not discuss it often, we can move faster than a thought when we need to. I've worked years to teach my ghouls the trick, though I could teach you a lot faster, I reckon. Oh, and one other thing. She looks around conspiratorially, though she's smiling when she raises her hand. It triples and transforms, and her lacquered nails grow 3 inches ... only for a second. We got lots of outlanders here in Texas. Rough types, you know? Not like Leto. Anarchs. I learned a few things from them, to help me with my flesh shaping. And if you help me out, I'll put a drop of my blood on your tongue and teach you the basics. Common disciplines available from Dispin, Auspex, Celerity, Presence, Protean. What do you want me to do about Nadia? I'll deal with Nadia. That'll make Julian furious, but so be it. Really? $5,000? What sort of hustle do you want me to run on your head, bouncer? Dispin shrugs. Kill her? She says. It's my club so I can just say it. Or beat her up. Or trash her equipment so she can't keep spying on me. I don't give a damn about the details. I just don't want it traced back to me. If I do that, Julian won't forgive me, you say. This isn't, like, a personal thing, Dispin says, her expression sympathetic. I don't even dislike Julian. I've met him a few times. Nice boy. Weird clothes, but not bad for an Assamite. But Leto doesn't like him, so I need to not like him. That's how it is. I'll deal with Nadia. That'll make Julian furious, but so be it. Really? $5,000? What sort of hustle do you want me to run on your head, bouncer? From what I've seen of the sea, they're a confused group of overlapping government agencies that barely understand what we are. They're desperate for more information, even if it's bad. I've been going through my files from the 90s, back before I had this place or the Bruchiquid and the Assamites showed up, you know? All this information, it looks real good. Real up to date. But I've been going through it, and it's wrong. Dangerously wrong. And I made some changes, and, like, it's so wrong it's basically a weapon. Get it to Louis, and he'll bring it right back to his masters. Like a bomb. I'll deal with Nadia. That'll make Julian furious, but so be it. Really? $5,000? I'll get that false data to your bouncer. That'll keep the Camarilla safe. I don't like doing the Camarilla's dirty work, but I like the sea. I had my suspicions about Louis, Despin says from the disorganized desk of her modest office. But the sea? She glances at Millicent. The bartender nods in confirmation. Millie, get Yuri and the other Russian, that woman who worked for the group. Let them know we're going to need someone killed. I thought Celeste was going to. And if she can't, Despin says, the Russians will deal with him. So be a dear and tell them to get ready. When Millicent leaves, Despin hands you a thick manila envelope full of dangerously outdated information. You skim it, now irrelevant kindred power brokers, long destroyed princes, political contacts that the Camarilla abandoned years ago, everything dated to look like it's recent. Trying to exploit any of this information will get a hunter killed. I don't care how you get this to Louis, she says. But get it to him in a way that lets him believe it's valuable. Stepping back into the jazz club late that night with your parcel, you consider what to do. You can't just hand Louis the parcel. You need to lure him in. Like every good con, it requires a mark who wants what you have. Millicent is happy to supply you with information on the bouncer, including the address of his townhouse nearby, notes on his checking account, and other personal information. Your previous investigation of the cinder block means that you're even able to speak to some of the security personnel there and learn about him. The address isn't obviously useful, because it's not like you're robbing him. You're trying to get him to rob you. Still, knowing where he lives lets you track his movements, to the cinder block, to the gym, to a 24-hour diner where he ends each long night. You see a few ways to convince Louis to go for the package of bad data. But you know you'll only have one shot at this. And there's one other problem: if you lose this parcel, it's a major breach of the Masquerade, even if the information is out of date. Elena and I lure Louis into pursuing me, then I quickly duck into an alley and disappear, dropping the parcel. Risking myself will guarantee he believes me, but I'm risking myself. Dex plus clandestine / subterfuge, I lure him into pursuing me, then sink into the earth. That should make it trivially easy to elude him. Protean, I create a false identity and pretend to be a fellow hunter to trick Louis into accepting this valuable information. Man plus subterfuge, I'm going to rent space for the package at a Ustrit, then cleverly leave its security compromised in a way that will let Louis break in without raising his suspicions. Int/wit plus clandestine, Elena and I spread hints about this information through the criminal underworld, then sell it to him. That will take real brains and won't be easy, but I'll make some money. Int/wit plus streetwise. Now that you know the bouncer's favored routes around his townhouse and the cinder block, you and Elena work out the best place for him to spot you. This deserted strip of road, between a weedy lot and an abandoned drive-through restaurant, gives you plenty of ways to break line of sight so you can catch Louis's attention without catching his bullets. A busy convenience store is around the corner but within running distance if you need social cover. It takes you a night for Louis to see you, but you're sure he recognizes you. Then, early one evening as the streetlights are still flickering on, you grab the parcel and head back to the deserted road. Elena signals you that he's coming, then disappears around the corner to wait by her Datsun in case things go wrong. Louis moves fast when he sees you, armed with a bullpup rifle that he keeps low until he's sure he's identified the target. Freeze, fucker. He's identified the target. But you're standing where you want to be. You duck, then sink into the gritty soil at your feet. Louis is a pro, he doesn't shoot. Instead he darts across the deserted parking lot, so he can flank you. As you sink all the way into the ground, leaving only the parcel, you can feel him moving around above you, his footsteps heavy. When his breathing steadies, you feel him kneel down, scoop up the parcel, and run. You got him. You wait most of the night, then crawl out of the earth. No one is around, but you run for Elena's waiting car. She is still there, waiting with her lights off between two suffs. Did it work? Elena asked. Perfectly, you say. Hard copies, of course, Despin says from around the corner as she unlocks a metal safe in her modest and cluttered office. She hands you a slimline briefcase with everything Leto asked for. What about my blood? You say. You're what now? Listen, you're lucky I don't slap you into next Thursday. I'm giving you this information as a favor to Leto, but I don't need some no-good courier sucking on my tit learning my powers, you hear? After taking a second to master herself, Despin gestures to the briefcase and says, "There's everything you need." She also hands you the registration information for a motel room outside El Paso. So you have a place to stay on the way back. How pleasant. You pick up the briefcase and leave the cinder block. After one last day spent resting in the Dallas apartment, you call Elena, and she helps you pack the apartment and sweep it of any signs of your presence. Your retainer takes off in her Datsun, and you leave by a separate route an hour later, using side streets to avoid pursuit. You're back on the highway in less than an hour. Your nerves are rattled the whole drive home. You feel eyes on you, and once you hear helicopters overhead. The motel outside El Paso seems secure, though Julian's thrall, Nadia, shows up just a few minutes before dawn. Here to scan the briefcase Despin gave you, she says. Sure. But make it quick. You're not going to do anything to it that Leto would notice, right? I'm still trying to play both sides and stay safe. Not for free you aren't. I'm not working for Julian anymore. Piss off. Of course not, Nadia says. She bangs on the door with whatever she's dragging behind her, knocking it open, and barges inside. You could stop her and she knows it, but as long as Julian doesn't expose you to the Camarilla, this shouldn't be a problem. Nadia hauls her suitcase up onto your bed and assembles some kind of scanning kit. You think it's the same sort of thing you're supposed to bring to find Ramos out in the desert. Her scanning takes less than 10 minutes, then she gets out of there before your Lobo eats her. The next night, just like the first night, you spot cars following you for miles and miles. Inoya howls and whimpers in the passenger seat. Once, you're passed by a Tesla truck doing well over 100 miles per hour. But no one makes a move. You take side streets into Tucson, top off your gas tank just in case, but no one comes for you. You roll into the Viper parking lot. The Viper is still shut down. Graffiti covers one wall. When your headlights slice through a nearby alley, shining eyes reflect the light. Then whoever was hiding there scatters, fleeing deeper into the city. When you step out of your Audi, broken glass crunches underfoot. Riga is watching you from a lamppost. She calls softly. Inoya growls, low and vicious. The interior echoes with your step, like the tomb of some forgotten emperor. The lights are out, except the red glow of emergency exits and some track lighting around the bar. A few armadillos snuffle around the entrance to the kitchen. Leto is seated at one table, reading Olga Tokarczuk's Biguni. A pile of turquoise jewelry is scattered across the table. Your Lobo hangs back when she spots the eagle prince. Celeste, Leto says, setting the novel down when you enter. His voice is soft. Do you have what I sent you for? Something tells you not to get too close. You set the briefcase down on the table and slide it across to the eagle prince. He opens it. This is it. Very good, Celeste. His voice is distracted. After a few seconds, the prince says, "Why don't you sit down? We have some things to discuss. They concern events in my past. And your future." He knows what I did. I'm fucking dead. Time to run. I scan for exits and get ready. I'm not going to give this prince the satisfaction of an apology or a show of weakness. What do you want, Leto? It's not like I don't regret what I did. Maybe this is the only way forward. What do you want to know, Prince Leto? The best defense is unloading an entire magazine into someone's face and chest. I shift a little so I can reach my pistol ... just in case. I have my sword with me. I shift a little so I can unzip the bag I carry it in if I need it. The Prince of Tucson sighs, looks away, then says, "I need to understand." "Boss." Dove shouts, skidding to a halt beside the prince. Leto doesn't startle. He only glances calmly toward the former courier. "I just spoke with Sister Moore," she says. She dealt with the health inspector and figured out who was controlling him. They're all ours now. We can reopen. Leto jumps to his feet, scattering jewelry and dropping his novel. "When? Now. Like, right now. And we need to. Our budget is down to what we owe Celeste," Leto says. "Pay her, then call someone to play a live show tomorrow night. I don't care who. Someone loud. No cover charge for the rest of the week. We'll make it back in drink sales." And Leto is off to make plans, monetary fears temporarily overriding whatever very final conversation, you expect he planned to have with you. A few minutes later, one of the retainers hands you a wad of cash. By that time, the Viper is already filling up again. Another job done, you suppose. You return to your penthouse and park the Audi. You check your earnings from your partial stake in St. Basil's Hospital, then spend $1,243 on upkeep, maintenance, fines, and fees to perpetuate your twilight existence. Tucson is full of clubs, but you need to find the right combination of good music, bad security, and modest kindred interference. At first you're unimpressed by what the city offers beyond the Viper, but then you find a place north of the university that feels right. The Snapdragon is less glamorous than the Viper, with less electronica and more rock and old-school hip-hop, and it caters to an older, harder clientele, bikers, gamblers, local toughs of all genders. Kindred lurk here, including Edward, a vampire of the Ministry you know only by reputation. The Ministry's reputation is evil snake cult, so you avoid the tall Haitian and his silver cane. This place will do nicely. It's 80s night at the Snapdragon, with a band covering hard rock and heavy metal hits. Experience points, 13. Tucson, Arizona. Night of December 14. Sunrise, 7:17 a.m. You pick Elena up at Covenant Pawn Shop, then drive to the Viper. You tune the Audi's radio to hear the news. Instead you get an interview about 4 deaths linked to this nightclub, including Greg's suicide and the apparent murder of a police officer. Well, you say linked, Alan, Mel Pomini says. But what kind of link is there? Then there was the attack on the migrant camp, all the news about that genetic research facility. And what about the sudden dissolution of the 2100X? 21. A global conspiracy to shape our lives in the year 2100. Greg and I heard someone talk about that once. He said that we all thought about the year 2000, but no one is thinking about the year 2100. Isn't that weird? It's like we can't imagine a future for our race anymore. It's like someone took all those plans we had for the future. Where did they go? That's about all the time we. Why can't we think of the future anymore, Miss Chen? They already took our past, our heritage, and they're taking. As always, Alan, thank you for your time. Mel at midnight starts talking about movie star gossip.